Danny Carter pressed his nose against the cold window of the spaceship and stared at the planet below. It looked like a giant green marble spinning in the darkness of space. Strange clouds moved across its surface, but they were not like Earth. Clouds. These looked thick and glowing, like someone had painted them with silver paint. The 12-year-old boy had been traveling with his parents for 3 months now. His mom and dad were scientists who studied alien plants and animals. They were going to spend 2 years on different planets, learning about life in other worlds. Danny did not mind the travel. He had his tablet with him, filled with thousands of books and stories. As long as he could read, he was happy anywhere. The spaceship shook suddenly. Danny grabbed the edge of the window as alarms started ringing. Throughout the ship, red lights flashed on and off, making everything look scary. "Danny, come here right now." His mother called from across the room. Dr. Lisa Carter was working at her computer, trying to save all her research files. Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard while she talked. "We need to get to the escape pods." Danny picked up his tablet and ran to his mother. The tablet was his most important thing. It had every story he loved, every game he played, and every book he had ever read. He never went anywhere without it. His father, Dr. Pete Carter, ran into the room. His face was white with fear. "The escape pod area is broken. We cannot get there. The ship is going to crash." The captain's voice came through the speakers, but it was hard to hear because of all the noise. "Everyone hold on. We are going down. Find something strong to grab." Danny felt scared. His parents put their arms around him and pushed him into a corner of the room. His mother grabbed some soft materials from her lab and wrapped them around Danny. His father found a strong metal box and put it over them like a roof. "Whatever happens, Danny, we love you," his mother said. Her voice was shaking. "We will always love you," his father added. The ship hit the planet with a sound like thunder. Danny felt like he was inside a giant drum that someone was hitting with a huge stick. Everything went flying around the room. The lights went out. The floor became the wall, then the ceiling, then the floor again. Danny could not tell which way was up or down. Something heavy hit his head, and everything went black. When Danny woke up, he was lying on soft, glowing grass. His head hurt, and his arm was bleeding a little, but he could move all his parts. The sky above him was not like Earth's sky. It had 2 suns, one yellow and one orange. They made everything look like it was covered in warm honey. Danny sat up slowly and looked around. The spaceship was broken into many pieces. Big chunks of metal were scattered everywhere, some still smoking. The pieces were spread across a huge area, like someone had thrown a toy spaceship as hard as they could. "Mom! Dad!" Danny called out. His voice sounded small in the big, empty space. He got up and started walking toward the biggest piece of the ship. "Mom! Dad! Where are you?" He searched through the broken metal for hours. He found clothes and broken computers and twisted pieces of the ship's walls. But he did not find his parents. He called their names until his throat was sore, and his voice was just a whisper. As the 2 suns started to set, Danny found a small pile of supplies that had survived the crash. There were some food packages, bottles of water, a water cleaning machine, and a small tent. His tablet was there too, somehow not broken. When he picked it up, the screen lit up and showed his library of stories. Just like always, Danny set up the small tent as darkness came to the strange planet. The darkness here was different from Earth darkness. The plants around him glowed with soft blue and green light. The air smelled like metal and electricity. Strange sounds came from far away, like singing or crying, but Danny could not tell which. Inside his tent, Danny turned on his tablet. The familiar light from the screen made him feel a little better. He was alone on an alien planet, far from home, with no way to call for help. His parents were gone. He was more scared than he had ever been in his life. Danny opened his favorite story and started reading out loud to himself. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a brave young prince who had lost his way in a dark forest. His voice was shaky at first, but it got stronger as he read. The words were like friends in the scary darkness. They reminded him of home, of sitting with his mother while she read to him, of the safe feeling of being loved. He did not know that in the caves around his crush site, huge eyes were watching him. He did not know that creatures older than human civilization were listening to his voice carry across the crystal formations. He did not know that his simple act of reading a story out loud was about to change everything. As Danny read about the brave prince finding his way home, creatures that had been called monsters for thousands of years began to move closer to the sound of his voice. They had never heard anything like it before. They had never heard someone tell a story just to feel better, just to remember that good things were possible. Danny fell asleep with his tablet on his chest, still glowing softly. Around him, the alien world hummed with life he could not see. But for the first time since the crash, he did not feel completely alone. Somehow, reading the old familiar words had made the scary place feel a little bit safer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and impossible meetings. But tonight, a human boy slept peacefully under alien stars, protected by the power of stories and watched over by ancient eyes that were beginning to understand that not all small things were prey. The crash had ended one part of Danny's life, but it had also begun something entirely new, something that would change not just his life, but the lives of creatures across the galaxy. It would all start with a simple question that would come the next day. What is this word you use? Story? But that was tomorrow's adventure. Tonight, Danny dreamed of home and woke up ready to face whatever came next. Danny woke up on his third morning on the strange planet to a sound he had never heard before. It was deep and rumbling, like thunder that would not stop. But this thunder seemed to come from under the ground, not from the sky. He crawled out of his small tent and looked around. The crystal trees around him were shaking slightly. Small rocks were rolling down the hills. The glowing moss on the ground was pulsing brighter than usual, as if it was scared too. The rumbling sound got louder. Then Danny heard something else, a scraping noise, like giant claws digging through stone. The sound was coming from a dark opening in the rocks that he had not noticed before. It looked like the entrance to a huge cave. Danny grabbed his tablet and the emergency signal device his parents had given him. He was ready to run if he needed to, but something made him stay and watch. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that he had nowhere else to go anyway. A head came out of the cave opening, but it was not just any head. It was the biggest head Danny had ever seen, bigger than his whole tent. It was covered in scales that changed color as he watched, shifting from black to deep purple to dark green. Two huge eyes looked right at him. These were not the eyes of a dumb animal. There was thinking behind those eyes. There was intelligence. The creature pulled more of its body out of the cave. It was like a dragon from the old stories, but much bigger and more real than anything Danny had ever imagined. Its body was as long as a school bus. Its wings were folded against its back, but Danny could see they would be enormous when spread out. Its claws were as big as kitchen knives. More dragons came out of other cave openings Danny had not seen these caves before because they blended so well with the crystal rocks. Soon there were 5 dragons, then 10, then 15. They were all huge. They were all looking at him. Danny's heart was beating so fast, he thought it might jump out of his chest. These were the creatures his parents had warned him about, the most dangerous animals in the galaxy. They could burn him to nothing with their fire breath. They could tear him apart with their claws. They could crush him just by stepping on him. But they were not attacking. They were just watching. Danny's hands were shaking as he held his tablet. He did not know what to do. He could not run away. From creatures this big and fast, he could not fight them. He could not hide. The only thing he could think to do was the thing that always made him feel better when he was scared. He started to read. There once was a little rabbit named Benjamin who lived with his mother in a hole under the roots of a big tree. Danny's voice was small and shaky at first. He could barely hear himself over the sound of his own heartbeat. The dragons tilted, their huge heads to one side like dogs do when they hear a strange sound. One of them took a step closer. Danny wanted to run, but he kept reading instead. Benjamin's mother told him he could go anywhere in the fields, but he must never, ever go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Danny's voice got a little stronger. The story was familiar and comforting. Even in this scary situation, something amazing happened then. The biggest dragon, the one with scales like black oil, lay down on the ground. Then another dragon did the same thing. Then another. Soon all the dragons were lying down in a big circle around Danny, like giant cats resting in the sun. Danny kept reading about Benjamin Rabbit and his adventures in the garden. He read about how Benjamin got into trouble and how his mother helped him. He read about courage and curiosity and the importance of listening to people who love you. When he finished the story, everything was quiet. The dragons were still looking at him, but now they seemed less scary. They seemed more like they were waiting for something. Then the biggest dragon, the black one, opened its mouth and spoke. Its voice was deep and rumbling, like the sound of distant thunder. Small creature makes sounds with meaning. What is this thing you do? Danny's mouth fell open. He had read that some alien animals could talk, but seeing it happen was completely different. The dragon's words were clear, but they sounded old-fashioned, like people in history books. You can talk, Danny said. We have always spoken words. Others do not stay long enough to hear them. The dragon's huge eyes blinked slowly. Most small creatures run when they see us. Most big creatures attack us. You do neither. Why? Danny thought about this question. Because you did not try to hurt me. You just listened. What is this word you used? Story? The dragon said the word carefully, like it was learning a new language. A story is something you tell to share ideas, or to feel better, or to learn something. Danny explained. That one was about a little rabbit who did not listen to his mother and got into trouble. Rabbit? Another dragon spoke up. This one had copper-colored scales that shined in the sunlight. What is rabbit? Danny realized these creatures might not know about earth animals. A rabbit is a small, furry animal with long ears and a fluffy tail. They hop instead of walk, and they eat plants. Small creature tells of other small creatures that exist in other places. A black dragon seemed very interested. These rabbit creatures are real? Well, yes, rabbits are real. But this particular rabbit, Benjamin, is not real. Someone made up the story about him to teach children lessons. The dragons looked at each other. Danny could tell they were confused. Not real, but told as if real? The copper dragon asked. Why would creatures make sounds about things that did not happen? Danny had never had to explain what stories were before. Everyone he knew understood stories. Because stories help us learn and feel better and imagine new things. Even if they are not real, they can teach us real things. Teach real things with not real happenings, the black dragon repeated slowly. This is new thought for us. What are your names? Danny asked. I'm Danny. I am called Korath, the black dragon said. I have lived many seasons and speak for my people. This is Dizes. He nodded toward the copper dragon. She is young but wise. People? Danny asked. You mean there are more of you? Many more, Korath said. We live deep in the crystal caves. We have lived here longer than most stars had shined, but we have never heard anyone speak of rabbits in gardens and mothers who care for their young. Would you like to hear more stories? Danny asked. The dragons looked at each other again. Then Koreth nodded his huge head. Yes, Danny creature, we would hear more of these story sounds. Just Danny is fine, the boy said with a small smile. And I have thousands of stories on my tablet here. As the two suns moved across the alien sky, Danny found himself sitting in the middle of a circle of the galaxy's most feared predators, reading them fairy tales and explaining what imagination meant. It was the strangest and most wonderful thing that had ever happened to him. He did not know it yet, but he was about to change the course of galactic history, one story at a time. Danny had been living among the dragons for 2 weeks now. Every day, more dragons came to listen to his stories. They brought him food that was safe for humans to eat and fresh water from deep underground springs. They had even helped him build a better shelter using crystal formations that kept him warm and dry. Today, as Danny finished reading a story about a brave knight who saved a village from a terrible monster, Koreth looked troubled. The ancient dragon's scales had shifted to a darker color, almost black. Danny friend, Koreth said. The dragons had started calling him this after the first week. Danny liked it. It made him feel less alone. This story speaks of knights who fight monsters. Are we the monsters in your people's stories? Danny looked up from his tablet. Around him, 23 dragons sat in their usual circle. He had counted them yesterday. Each one was different. Some had scales like jewels. Others looked like they were made of metal. Some were older with scars on their bodies. Others were younger and still growing. Well, Danny said carefully, some stories do have dragons as the bad guys, but not all of them. There are stories where dragons are wise and helpful too. Dizes, the copper-colored dragon, moved closer. Tell us truth, small Danny friend. What do your people say about our kind? Danny did not want to hurt their feelings, but he had learned that the dragons valued honesty above everything else. Most people are afraid of you. They say you attack ships and burn cities. They call you the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. The dragons were quiet for a long time. Finally, an old dragon with silver scales spoke up. His name was Vorthik, and he had many scars across his face and body. The fear stories are not lies, Danny friend. We have attacked ships. We have burned settlements. We have killed many of your kind and others too. Danny felt a chill run through his body. Why? Because for 3,000 years, everyone who came to our worlds came with weapons, Koreth explained. They came to hunt us, to take our scales for armor, to steal our crystal caves for mining. They shot first and asked questions never. We learned to shoot first too, Vorthik added. His voice was sad. It was survive or die, fight or be destroyed. Danny tried to understand. So you fought because you were protecting yourselves? At first, yes, Isis said. But after many seasons of fighting, we forgot there was any other way to live. We forgot that creatures could meet without trying to kill each other. Koreth's great head lowered until he was looking directly into Danny's eyes. You are the first creature in 1,000 seasons to approach us without fear or weapons. The first to offer something instead of trying to take something. What did I offer? Danny asked. Stories, said a young dragon whose scales shimmered like rainbow glass. Her name was Zara, and she was barely bigger than a horse. You gave us stories, but stories are just words, Danny said. No, Danny friend, Koreth said gently. Stories are much more than words. Before you came, we knew only 3 things: hunting, fighting, and hiding. Your stories have shown us there are other ways to live. Danny looked around at all the dragon faces watching him. What do you mean? Isis stretched her long neck and looked up at the sky. Your rabbit story taught us about mothers who care. for their children even when the children make mistakes. We had forgotten what caring felt like. Your night stories taught us about protecting others instead of just protecting ourselves, Vorthik added. We had forgotten that strength could be used to help instead of hurt. Your princess stories taught us about kindness and gentleness, Zara said. We thought those things were weaknesses. Now we see they are different kinds of strength. Danny felt something warm growing in his chest. You really like the stories that much? Like is too small a word, Korith said. Your stories are teaching us to remember who we used to be before the fear and fighting. Long ago, before the wars started, dragon families lived together in great crystal cities. We had art and music and learning. We studied the stars and grew beautiful gardens. What happened to all that? Danny asked. The first attacks came when I was young like Zara, Korith explained. Ship after ship came to our worlds. They wanted our crystals, our fire glands, our scales. When we tried to talk, they shot us. When we tried to hide, they hunted us. When we tried to run, they followed us to new worlds. So you learned to fight. Back, Danny said. We became very good at fighting, Vorthik said. Too good. Soon, fighting was all we knew how to do. We stopped building cities. We stopped making art. We stopped teaching our young ones about beauty and wonder. We taught them only how to survive. Danny was quiet for a moment, thinking, but you still remember the old ways? Deep in our hearts, yes, Nizes said. Your stories wake up those old memories. They remind us that life can be about more than just staying alive. We want to learn more, Zara said eagerly. Will you teach us about hope, about friendship, about love? Danny smiled. I can share stories about all those things. I have thousands of stories. Then we will listen, Korith said. And perhaps when we understand these things better, we can teach them to other dragons. Maybe someday we can try talking to other species again instead of fighting them. You think that could really happen? Danny asked. Your people have a saying, do they not? Korith said. Something about every journey beginning with a single step? Every journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, Danny quoted. Yes, perhaps our journey back to being more than just fighters begins with your stories, Danny friend. As the two suns set on another day, Danny opened his tablet to find a new story to share. He had never imagined that the simple act of reading could be so powerful. His stories were not just entertaining these dragons. They were helping them remember how to be more than monsters. Tonight I want to read you a story about a lion and a mouse, Danny said. It is about how even the smallest creatures can help the biggest ones, and how kindness is never wasted. The dragons settled in to listen, their scales glowing softly. In the evening light, around them, the crystal caves hummed with an ancient music that had been silent for too long. But now, with each story Danny told, that music was slowly coming back to life. Danny did not know it yet. But word of the strange happenings on Dracarys Prime was beginning to spread through the dragon communities on other worlds. Soon, dragons, who had not spoken to outsiders in centuries, would begin the long journey to hear. The small human who told stories of hope. The galaxy was about to change, one story at a time. Danny had been on Dracarys Prime for over a month now. The crash site had changed completely. The dragons had carefully moved the crystal formations to create a natural outdoor theater. Soft, glowing moss now grew in patterns that gave perfect light for reading in the evenings. What had once been a place of destruction and loneliness had become something magical. Tonight, nearly 60 dragons had gathered to hear Danny read. They came from all across the continent now. Some flew for days just to listen to his stories. Danny had grown comfortable with his huge audience. His voice was stronger now, carrying clearly across the crystal amphitheater. The road goes ever on and on, Down from the door where it began, Danny read from his tablet. He was reading from one of his favorite books about hobbits and wizards and great adventures. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can. The dragons loved this story more than any other. They had been listening to it for a week now, and every night they asked questions that showed how deeply they understood it. Dizes raised her beautiful copper head. Danny friend, why does Frodo choose the hard path? He could stay in his safe home and be happy. Danny smiled. This was exactly the kind of question he hoped for. Because sometimes there are things more important than being safe and comfortable. Sometimes you have to be brave to protect the people you love. Even when you are small and the task is huge? Asked Zara, the young rainbow-scaled dragon. Especially. Then, Danny said, the story shows us that being big and strong is not the only way to be a hero. Sometimes the smallest person can make the biggest difference. Korith, the ancient black dragon, leaned forward. As you have done, Danny friend, you are small, even for your kind. Yet you have done something no warrior or diplomat could do. You have taught us to remember hope. I did not do anything special, Danny said. I just read stories. You did much more than that, Vorthik said. The old scarred dragon's voice was gentle. You saw past our claws and fire. You saw us as people, not monsters. That took great courage. Danny looked around at all the dragon faces watching him in the soft crystal light. You never gave me a reason to be afraid. You could have hurt me, but you chose not to. You listened instead. Others have not listened, rumbled a new voice. A massive dragon with golden scales had arrived that afternoon. His name was Drakkar, and he was one of the clan leaders from the northern mountains. For 3,000 years, they see only teeth and claws and fire. They run or they attack. None have ever seen us. But Danny friend sees us, Nyzes said softly. And through his stories, we are learning to see ourselves differently too. It was true. Over the past weeks, Danny had watched the dragons change in amazing ways. They had begun sharing their own memories with him, not stories of battles and survival, but older memories from before the wars. They told him about crystal cities where young dragons learned to paint with controlled fire. They described vast libraries carved into living stone where dragon scholars studied the movements of stars and planets. We could try again, Zara said suddenly. All the older dragons turned to look at the young one. The stories Danny friend reads teach us that enemies can become friends. Perhaps the galaxy has changed too. 3,000 years of war are not forgotten in 1 month of stories. Little one, Korith said gently. But they can be, Danny said with the certainty that only children have. Every story has to start somewhere. Maybe our story starts here with all of us. Our story? Drakkar asked, his golden eyes reflecting the crystal light. The story of dragons and humans becoming friends, Danny explained. The story of how enemies learn to trust each other. The story of how one small boy and some very big dragons proved that talking is better than fighting. The dragons were quiet, thinking about this idea. Finally, Nyzes spoke up. In your stories, Danny friend, how do enemies become friends? Danny thought carefully. Usually it starts with understanding. One side realizes that the other side is not as different as they thought. Then they start talking instead of fighting. They find things they both care about. What do dragons and humans both care about? Vorthik asked. Well, Danny said, we both care about our families. We both want to be safe. We both want to learn new things. We both like stories, apparently. And we both want to be understood. Instead of feared, Korith added slowly. Yes, Danny said. That is very important. Drakkar stretched his great wings and folded them again. The young human speaks wisdom. But how does one convince a galaxy that has feared us for so long? The same way you convinced me that you are not monsters, Annie said. You show them who you really are. You let them hear your stories, too. Our stories? Zara asked. Yes. Stories about dragon families, and dragon cities, and dragon art. Stories about how you used to live before the wars. Stories about dragon children learning to fly, and dragon grandparents teaching ancient songs. The dragons looked at each other with something Danny had never seen in their eyes before. It was excitement mixed with hope, mixed with fear. It was the look of people who were thinking about doing something that could change everything. It would be very dangerous, Vorthik said. If we try to make contact and they attack us anyway, many could die. But if we do nothing, nothing changes, Vasis pointed out. We stay hidden in our caves forever, and the galaxy keeps thinking we are monsters. Danny friend, Korath said, if we decided to try this thing, would you help us? Would you teach? Use how to talk to your people the way you talk to us. Danny felt a warm feeling spread through his chest. These magnificent creatures were asking for his help. They trusted him. Of course I would help. We are friends now. Friends help each other. Friends, Dracker repeated the word slowly, as if testing how it sounded. Yes, we are friends. As the night grew deeper and the crystal formations glowed brighter, Danny continued reading about brave hobbits and wise wizards. But now he was also thinking about the future. Maybe someday soon, dragon children and human children would sit together and listen to the same stories. Maybe someday, the galaxy would have one more story to tell, the story of how fear became friendship, and how friendship became peace, that the dragons were thinking the same thing. For the first time in 3,000 years, they were planning for a future that included hope instead of just survival. And it had all started with one small boy who believed that stories could change the world. They were about to find out if he was right. Danny was reading a story about a princess and a dragon who became best friends when the sky suddenly roared with thunder. But this was not natural thunder. This was the sound of spaceship engines breaking through the atmosphere. All 67 dragons looked up at once. Their scales shifted to darker colors as they prepared for danger. Danny had never seen them look so worried. Stay calm, Korath said in his deep voice. Do not move quickly. Do not spread your wings. Danny friend, keep reading. But Danny was too excited to read. A rescue ship had finally found him. After 6 weeks on this alien planet, he was going to see other humans again. He jumped to his feet and waved at the sky. Wait, Danny friend, Lysis said urgently. Your people will see. U.S. and think we are attacking you. Danny stopped waving. She was right. From the sky, it would look like a small human boy surrounded by the galaxy's most dangerous predators. The rescue team would think the worst. A huge military ship appeared through the clouds. It was gray and covered with weapons. Danny could see its guns turning to point at the dragons. Red targeting lights began sweeping across the crystal amphitheater. This is Captain Jake Murphy of the Federation Ship Defender. A loud voice boomed from the ship's speakers. Human survivor, move. Away from the hostile creatures immediately. We are here to rescue you. Danny looked at his dragon friends. They had not moved. They sat perfectly still, even though he could see fear in their ancient eyes. They were afraid, but they trusted him. They are not hostile, Danny shouted up at the ship. They are my friends. Danny friend, Korath whispered. Finish the story. First, let them hear what we do here. Danny understood. He sat back down, picked up his tablet, and continued reading in a clear, strong voice. And so the princess and the dragon worked together to save the kingdom, and everyone learned that friendship is stronger than fear. The end, Danny said clearly. The dragons did something amazing then. They began to applaud, just like audiences did in human theaters. The sound of 67 pairs of massive claws clapping together echoed across the crystal formations. The ship hovered silently above them. Danny could imagine the confusion on the bridge. This was not what anyone expected. To find Dot then, Korath did something that had not happened in 3,000 years. He stood up slowly and spoke to the humans in the ship. Captain Murphy of the Federation Ship Defender. Korath's voice carried clearly through the air. I am Korath, speaker for the deep clans of Dracarys Prime. We request permission to open. Diplomatic talks. The silence from the ship lasted for nearly 5 minutes. Danny waited. The dragons waited. Everyone waited. Finally, Captain Murphy's voice came through the speakers again, but it sounded very different now. It sounded confused and careful. This is Captain Murphy. In 3,000 years of galactic history, no dragon has ever requested diplomatic talks. Many things that have never happened before are happening now, Korath replied. Danny friend has taught us much about your people through the sharing of stories. We would learn more and perhaps teach in return. The age of fear does not need to last forever. Danny friend? Captain Murphy asked. Danny stood up again. That is what they call me, sir. I am Danny Carter. My parents were Dr. Lisa Carter and Dr. Pete Carter. They died when our research ship crashed here 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks? You have been alone with dragons for 6 weeks? Not alone, Danny said. They have been taking care of me. They brought me food and water. They helped me build a better shelter. They listened to my stories. Stories? Dyes spoke. Up then, her copper scales gleaming in the afternoon light. Danny friend reads to us every day from his collection of human tales. We have learned about friendship, courage, and hope. We wish to share these gifts with others. Captain Murphy was quiet for a long time. Danny could see small ships leaving. The main vessel. They were coming down to land nearby. We are sending a shuttle to pick up the boy, Captain Murphy announced. Any aggressive movement from the dragons will result in immediate defensive action. We understand, Korath said. We will not move. But we ask that Danny friend be allowed to return to continue his teaching, if he wishes. There is much work still to be done. The shuttle landed at the edge of the crystal amphitheater. 5 soldiers in full armor stepped out, their weapons ready. They moved carefully toward Danny, watching the dragons the whole time. Danny Carter? The team leader called. Yes, sir, Danny answered. We are here to take you home, son. Danny looked at the dragons and at the soldiers. Can I say goodbye to my friends first? The team leader looked nervous. These creatures are your friends? They saved my life, Danny said simply. They taught me that being different does not mean being bad. And I taught them that stories can heal old hurts. Danny walked to each dragon and touched their great heads gently. To the soldiers' amazement, the massive creatures lowered themselves so the small boy could reach them. Thank you for everything, Danny whispered to Korath. Thank you for reminding us who we used to be and who we can be again, Korath replied. 3 hours later, Danny sat on the bridge of the Defender, telling Captain Murphy and his crew about everything that had happened. He explained how the dragons were not monsters, but an ancient civilization that had forgotten how to trust. He told them about the stories and the friendship and the hope for peace. Captain, Danny said as they prepared to leave orbit, they want to try talking instead of fighting. Is not that what we have always wanted too? Captain Murphy looked out at the planet below, where dragons were emerging from caves all across the continents. Word had spread quickly. The age of hiding was ending. Yes, Danny, Captain Murphy said slowly. That is exactly what we have always wanted. 6 months later, the Treaty of Crystal Falls was signed on Dracarys Prime. Danny Carter, age 12, served as the chief cultural ambassador between humans and dragons. The treaty established the first peace agreement between the species in galactic history. But more importantly, it established the Galactic Story Project, where every species would share their tales and dreams with every other species. Because Danny had proven something amazing, stories could build bridges between any people, no matter how different they seemed. And every night, on worlds across the galaxy, children of many species fell asleep to the same magical words that had started it all. Once upon a time, in a galaxy not so far away, there lived creatures who learned that friendship was stronger than fear. The age of monsters was over. The age of friends had begun.